Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really central to our questions, especially romantic ones. It's trust.
hmm
We've been looking at an article, Signs You Can't Trust Your Boyfriend, by Dr. Saul McLeod, also reviewed by Olivia Evans.
Yeah, a really insightful piece.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and maybe grappling with that, that uneasy feeling of distrust in your own relationship, well, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Such a tough spot to be in emotionally.
It really is. So our goal today is to unpack those signals, maybe explore some common reasons behind them, and understand the impact they can have.
Right, because trust, as the article makes clear right away, it's really the bedrock, isn't it?
Totally the foundation.
And when that feels shaky, it affects, well, pretty much everything.
Okay, so let's jump in. How do we even recognize when distrust might be an issue? The article gives some clear indicators, starting with something I think a lot of people might relate to. That feeling of doubt, of constantly questioning.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the contrast the article draws. So on one hand, with distrust, you're maybe constantly second-guessing things.
Like, where were you really, or who are you talking to, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Questioning his actions, his intentions. But then on the flip side, trust is more like this fundamental belief in what he says, assuming, good intentions.
It's a default setting, almost. Belief versus suspicion.
Pretty much.
Then the article talks about something more active monitoring behavior, and this can sometimes tip over into control.
Right. And this touches on that tricky balance,
Hmm.
privacy versus connection. The examples are things like snooping on his phone, constantly checking social media,
Demanding passwords, maybe?
or location sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Or needing him to be reachable, like
Yeah.
all the time.
No.
It's quite different from a trusting dynamic where you respect that personal space.
hmm
There just isn't that urge, that need to check up constantly.
It suggests a lack of internal security, maybe, if you feel that need to police things.
That could definitely be part of it. Okay, next sign. Jealousy. Now, a little bit might be normal sometimes, right? But the article's talking about something more intense.
Yeah, it's about the intensity and the trigger. Like feeling really jealous in totally innocent situations.
Mm.
Maybe he's just having a friendly chat.
Or even just imagining something happening and getting intensely jealous.
Exactly that.
Mhm.
Which is very different from a relationship where, jealousy is rare or maybe doesn't even come up and you actually want your partner to feel free.
That freedom within the connection,
Yeah.
knowing they choose to be there.
Right.
And the last sign for now, inability to be vulnerable. This feels huge for, like, real intimacy.
Oh, absolutely. Vulnerability is key. The article describes distrust,
Mm.
leading to this feeling of, well, being unable to share your real thoughts, your feelings.
If there's no specific reason not to.
Right. Or that kind of emotional shutdown if you're asked to open up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas trust means feeling confident that if you share something important, it's going to be, received respectfully, feeling emotionally safe.
Okay, so those are some signs. Let's dig a bit deeper now. Why might someone feel this lack of trust? The article suggests starting by looking inward first.
Exactly. It prompts you, the listener, to really think, is this distrust mainly about his actions? Or is it maybe more tied to my own past, my own insecurities?
Or both, potentially.
Often it's a mix, yeah. The reflection questions are really good here. Like, did something specific happen? A lie, maybe?
Or is this a pattern? Does it happen in all your relationships? What were past relationships like, trust-wise?
And even broader, do you generally find it hard to trust people or situations or even yourself? It helps trace the roots.
Makes sense. And one big root the article points to is past betrayals, like carrying old baggage into new situations.
That's a great way to put it. Past infidelity, dishonesty, broken promises.
Yeah.
These things can leave deep scars.
Right.
And if you've had repeated negative experiences, you might start to, well, expect untrustworthiness, almost learn it.
The article mentions Lisa, right? Dated guys who lied or cheated, and now she's distrustful.
Yeah, it perfectly shows how past wounds shape present fears. You become hypervigilant almost.
Even if the new partner hasn't done anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might misinterpret things because of that ingrained fear. It can, unfortunately, sabotage a good thing.
And it's not just romantic history, is it? Unstable family stuff from childhood can also play a role.
Definitely. Our earliest experiences with reliability, they kind of set a blueprint,
That makes total sense.
which leads into another really significant factor,
Mhm.
past mistreatment,
Mm.
specifically emotional abuse.
Yeah, this part. Wow. The quote from Dr. Joy Lane Gozo about emotional abuse being hidden but so damaging. Eroding trust not just in people, but in your own sense of safety, that's powerful.
It really is. And the article highlights how abusers use control, manipulation,
Mm.
and that has lasting effects on future trust.
Like being afraid to be vulnerable again.
Exactly. Or maybe distancing yourself preemptively. It's a defense mechanism, but it carries over. And sometimes, sadly, people might internalize feelings of unworthiness and then, maybe unconsciously, look for signs of being hurt.
The example of Callum getting suspicious, his boyfriend's behavior suddenly changed, became hot and cold, secretive.
Yeah, and that kind of sudden shift, that inconsistency, it understandably triggers distrust, especially if you have a history of mistreatment. Those become red flags.
Okay, so behavioral changes are key. What about just a lack of communication?
Huge. If you can't talk openly, honestly, how do you build trust?
Right.
The example of Lila and Patrick, he avoids emotional talks, seems uninterested when she tries to open up.
So she starts feeling like he doesn't care, and distrust grows.
Precisely. It sends that message, intended or not, that her feelings aren't important. Vulnerability and trust are so linked. When one's missing, the other suffers.
It creates a space for doubt to grow.
Exactly. Which brings us to the impact of childhood trauma.
This feels like a really deep layer, how our earliest experiences, especially with caregivers, shape our capacity to trust later on.
Yes. And the article connects this to brain development, to attachment styles.
Mhm.
Trauma can actually change how our brain detects threats.
Wow.
And it disrupts healthy attachments, those bonds that give us safety, security.
So if a child experiences neglect or abuse, they learn the world isn't safe, that people aren't reliable.
Fundamentally, yes.
Yeah.
They might develop disorganized attachment styles, not seeing caregivers as a safe base.
The article uses that phrase, cautiously self-reliant,
Adapting to survive an unpredictable environment.
and the long-term effects.
Well, the research suggests adults who were mistreated might be more emotionally aloof, struggle with closeness.
And older kids in foster care, described as suspicious and highly adaptable to control potential threats.
Yeah, seeing people as sources of fear, not love. These early patterns can become deeply ingrained and carry into adult relationships.
It's really heartbreaking how long that shadow can be. The article also mentions something else, media and external influences.
Right, the broader social context is not just our direct experiences.
Like the Ashley example. New to relationships, but seeing all this negative stuff online, cheating, ghosting.
And hearing friends' stories of betrayal.
So those external narratives, they can shape our beliefs about whether people can be trusted.
Definitely. Friends, family, societal messages like everyone cheats or whatever, they seep in. It can be hard to stay optimistic if you're constantly bombarded with negativity.
Like absorbing cultural anxiety about relationships.
Sort of, yeah. And that ties neatly into the final point here, insecure attachment styles. Which brings us back to those early childhood experiences.
Right, how those first bonds influence our adult patterns.
Exactly. Attachment theory suggests those early interactions shape how we see ourselves, others, and what we expect from relationships.
The example of Natasha, anxious attachment, constant fear of abandonment, always looking for signs her partner doesn't love her.
That's a classic anxious attachment pattern. Needing constant reassurance, worrying about rejection, maybe interpreting small things like a delayed text as a major threat.
Driven by that fear of not being good enough.
Often, yes. And the article distinguishes between anxious and avoidant styles.
Avoidant being more withdrawn.
Yeah, often fearing vulnerability because of potential hurt. They might prioritize independence, pull away from too much closeness. It's self-protection.
Yeah.
Anxious types, as we said, fear abandonment. And this can lead to distrustful behaviors.
Like what?
Monitoring behavior, seeing threats everywhere, ruminating, maybe comparing themselves to others the partner knows.
Catastrophizing about the future. Expecting to be dumped?
Yes. And sometimes becoming aggressive or confrontational if they perceive betrayal, real or not.
Wow.
And the article really stresses that this often traces back to early experiences. But also, past relationship betrayals can create this belief that people are untrustworthy.
So it becomes a cycle? Believing people are untrustworthy leads to distrustful thoughts and feelings?
The jealousy, the worry.
Even without a current reason. And then acting on those feelings, confronting, spying.
Exactly. And it's just so damaging, not just for the relationship, but for your own peace of mind, which makes addressing these issues vital.
It really shows how complex the roots of distrust can be. But, crucially, the article also says, sometimes it's not just about your past or your attachment style.
Right.
Sometimes that feeling of distrust is a valid red flag about the current relationship, about your boyfriend's behavior.
This is so important. While self-reflection is key, you also need to look at the reality of the situation.
So, like, if there's repeated dishonesty, lying, cheating,
Then struggling to trust is completely natural. It's a reasonable response.
makes sense. What about manipulation, gaslighting, silent treatment, that hot and cold stuff?
Those are tactics designed to control and undermine trust. They make you doubt yourself, your reality. Definitely red flags.
And unclear intentions, like emotional distance, lack of commitment talk.
Yeah, if things feel consistently vague or distant, that can absolutely create doubt and insecurity about where you stand.
So, if these things are happening, the article suggests
What?
talking about it, setting boundaries.
Yes, open conversation, clear boundaries are important first steps. But there's a tough caveat too.
Which is,
In cases of repeated lying, cheating, gaslighting, the chance of real, lasting change can be pretty low.
so you might need to reconsider the whole relationship.
It advises seriously thinking about the future, yeah. Sometimes the distrust is simply telling you the relationship itself isn't healthy.
Okay, so we've seen the signs, explored the reasons. Now, what about the consequences? How do trust issues actually affect a relationship day to day?
Well, fundamentally, they undermine the whole foundation. And one of the first casualties is usually communication.
How so?
When trust is low, people often hold back information. They might avoid difficult conversations altogether.
Fear of judgment, or maybe starting another fight.
Could be. Or resorting to passive aggression instead of direct talk. All of this makes resolving issues, staying close emotionally, really hard.
Right. The article mentioned avoiding talks about the past or emotions can breed suspicion.
And lead to a lack of real connection, yeah.
It sounds like it builds a wall. And another big impact, insecurity.
Oh, definitely. Lack of trust breeds constant anxiety, uncertainty. Where do I stand?
And how does that play out?
Well, one partner might get controlling, clingy, trying to grasp onto some security.
While the other might withdraw to avoid confrontation.
Exactly. It creates this destructive cycle. The article's anecdote about suspecting cheating, checking the phone.
Leading to arguments, resentment, emotional shutdown, and breakdown.
Yeah, it vividly shows how that distrust spirals. It can almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You expect the worst, and your actions help create it.
In a way, yes. The behaviors fueled by distrust further damage the connection.
It's like constantly chipping away at the relationship. And then there's emotional distance.
Production again.
Try not to get hurt more.
Pretty much. But it makes feeling close, understood, or valued really difficult.
The example of the partner denying lies, calling the other paranoid, leading to feeling like the partner's a stranger, that sounds incredibly isolating.
It really does. Just feeling dismissed and alone in the relationship.
And, maybe unsurprisingly, lack of trust often leads to more conflict, right?
It's absolutely. Frequent arguments, accusations flying, misunderstandings. It becomes the norm.
That example of constant fights about jealousy over interactions with other women, even when trying to talk about feelings calmly.
Yeah, it shows how distrust can create this exhausting cycle of conflict that's hard to escape.
And it doesn't just add negative stuff, it takes away the good stuff too, like support.
Exactly. Healthy relationships rely on mutual support, emotional, practical. When trust is gone, giving and receiving that support just dwindles.
So you feel isolated, alone.
Yeah, feeling unsupported, unappreciated by the person supposed to be your closest ally. Resentment builds.
The example where one partner seems dismissive during important talks.
And the other eventually just stops trying to connect. It shows how that lack of support really damages the core of the partnership.
It sounds truly devastating. And the ultimate consequence the article points to is a loss of commitment.
Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
Constant unresolved distrust can make both partners doubt the relationship's future.
So they might disengage, put in less effort.
Exactly. And as the article concludes, repeated hurt and lost trust create distance, sometimes leading all the way to a breakup.
Wow.
It's a really sobering reminder of how absolutely essential trust is for a relationship to survive, let alone thrive.
It really is the bedrock, isn't it? So for you listening, if you're grappling with these feelings of distrust, hopefully this deep dive, exploring the signs, the potential reasons, the impacts, gives you some clarity, maybe a new perspective. It's about recognizing patterns, understanding where these feelings might be coming from, past stuff, current dynamics, and seeing the real consequences.
Which leads to a really important question for you now. Listening to all this, what signs, what reasons really hit home for you? What feels most relevant to your situation?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. What might be a first step, something small maybe, to explore these feelings, whether it's just personal reflection or maybe thinking about a conversation with your partner?
Just considering what feels possible right now.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over later. If trust really is that fundamental, what would a relationship truly built on unwavering mutual trust actually look and feel like day to day?
Mhm.
And what kind of possibilities might open up in that kind of secure space? Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us.